Good morning. Let me go and share my screen. Right, you should see that. Um, so good morning. My name's Mark Buckwell. I'm a cloud security architect. I started out where many of you are probably earlier in your career, but I started out with a computer science degree, went on and did some software engineering, some coding for parallel systems, and joined IBM about 31 years ago. And the first project I joined was doing security. And from there, I moved around with doing different architecture roles for small systems like a SIEM solution, or dealing with global business applications that process $20 trillion a day, or dealing with global identity and access management systems. So, over time, I started out doing the small stuff. I moved on to some of the bigger stuff that we did for clients. Um, so just to give you an idea, so I've now spent 31 years in security, and developed a wide range of experience. My focus has really been on technical leadership. So background with computer science meant that I focus on technical rather than some of the um, governance, risk, and compliance, which I know you'll have in another session. Um, but now I'm author of a book for security architecture, lead an MSc module, and so on. So I'm now at the other end of my career teaching up and coming students to think like an architect. So that's a little bit about me. So I sort of went back to the definition, which is part of the secure systems architecture and design. And they talk about the role is selecting the best available solutions, and decisions made that fundamentally determine whether an organization can manage its data and information systems and communications networks securely. So it's really about making decisions so that you develop the best solution to meet the requirements of the organization. And that's not just thinking about security, it's often thinking about the other aspects of the organization, which, other risk aspects like availability, and even usability of the solution. So that's the foundation of what secure systems architecture and design is all about. And you'll see that on the website. But I have what I want to do is bring a little bit of perspective of the role that I've been doing as a practicing architect, and give you a little bit of more insight beyond that. So, what is design, architecture, and engineering? And you'll find those words bandied about, and I see jobs up for lead architects, and what they write in there is actually their lead engineers, their systems engineers or security engineers. So I thought I'd sort of reset the definition so that you understand what the role is and what the difference is between the different roles and what you enjoy really. So let's have a look at the definition. So what does an architect do? They start with requirements, often at design thinking in terms of business applications or other consulting practices, gathering the requirements. And I think of security really, if you're a security architect, that you're really a specialist application architect involving security, because often you'll be thinking about it as an application that sits on some infrastructure. So you'll be thinking about some of the business requirements that you need to go and focus on. You'll then do some architectural thinking, and I'll explain a bit more about what architectural thinking is, but it's making those significant design decisions. You go through and then do some engineering, which is the deployment, whether it's coding or it's configuring or setting up systems. And as being involved in systems design, architecture and design, you'll go into the engineering part partially, but really that's a sort of a different role. A security engineer is really getting hands-on, but architecture is more about the big architectural thinking, building blocks, but you still need to go and understand the technology that the engineers are working on. And then you need to think about the operations aspect of it. So because beyond that, systems change. and even during the operations aspect as being involved in architecture and design, you'll still be dealing with changes to the system over time and incidents that come along. And I'll give you a few more ideas about the activities, the daily activities for an architect. So really, that's the life cycle. So what's the difference between architecture and design? So Grady Booch was one of the founders of object-oriented design. And he set this great definition: all architecture is design, but not all design is architecture. Architecture represents a set of significant design decisions that shape the form and function of a system, where significant is measured by the cost of change. So if I want to change the security notice on the login, that's changing a few words. That decision to make that change is a design decision. It's not architecture. It's not a high cost. But if I change my security application, now I decide I want to go and change a different way of authentication from an internal perhaps mechanism to an external identity provider. That is a change in architecture and could have a significant cost of change to the solution. So that's what architecture is about, is making those significant architectural decisions, but design is the overall end-to-end process, including the requirements. And as an architect, you end up doing all of the design area as well, but also making architectural decisions. So who practices secure systems architecture and design? And again, I've simplified it, and there is a long list of different roles on the website, but I think of it as security architect. Their focus is security. They think about it really as an application. They're a specialist. They need to understand the aspects of the application and security architecture. And for example, if I'm doing identity and access management, I might have to understand the underlying database. I might have to understand directory service. I might have to understand resilience and how do I deal with, meet 5 nines. So I'm going to have to think about the overall architecture. So security, an architect is really just a specialist in a domain specialist that is an architect. So the other role that uses the skills is an infrastructure or application architect. So it's not we don't want the security architect to be the bottleneck. We would rather that the infrastructure application architect build the security into the application and then come to the security architect when they need the support for specialist knowledge in terms of solutions and things like that, or review the architecture. So generically, all architects do security, do the activities here. And the final role I'll just raise is security champion. As we change the way that we work into Agile or DevSecOps, we're finding that there are roles that are a cross between doing secure systems architecture and design and doing the engineering side. So they might get involved in modifying perhaps the pipeline as part of the development to inject security tools into that pipeline and do other things. They may actually understand how to code and so on. So they'll have those engineering skills. So I sort of create those 3 groupings. Now, security architect goes into another level. And again, I think of it as breaking down into enterprise security architect, the guy who looks at the overall architecture of for the organization. For small organizations, that probably doesn't exist, but for large organizations, some of the banks I worked with, somebody is thinking about the overall enterprise architecture, the building blocks that should be part of the system. They're thinking about the guiding principles, and perhaps there are architecture patterns, and that the guys actually implementing and designing solutions are solution security architects. They think about specific projects or initiatives within an organization, and they'll develop an architecture for a specific solution. And I give an example: privileged access management service. There are many product architects that you'll meet. So as a solution architect, you'll use products and you'll be gluing together different products. And I think one of the things about an architect is you're integrating different components together, and that's part of that architectural decision making. And the product architects will come in and give you the specialist knowledge about a particular product that's a building block of your overall architecture. And they will be deep specialists in specific domains, not given the identity and access management or threat detection. And so they'll understand the products, and you'll use them to go and put together your architecture. And finally, I put the other architect role is that often you'll have your application or infrastructure architect, and then you'll use advisory architects who will come and help you out on the specific security aspects of the solution. So these are my four groupings. There are many others, and you'll see lots of other roles: a cloud security architect, a network security architect, or so on, which will give you this particular specialisms. So that just gives you an idea of the opportunities in systems architecture and design for security. So what does my day look like now? I didn't do all of these things all at the same time, but my role as an architect, I often started at the requirements phase. It could be working on a design thinking workshop just to help identify some of the security relevant business requirements, expanding some of the processes. If there's the sequence of login, you might decide that you actually want to expand that out because that's important to you. Identifying requirements, internal, external to the organization, but documenting the non-functional requirements for your security. So I come back to the idea that a security architect has to understand all the other aspects of being an architect, not just security, in terms of availability and performance and scalability and so on. So they have to be a multidisciplinary specialist. And that's one of the joys of being a security architect, is you have all those challenging aspects to go and think about. So you've got your requirements. We then go and think about, well, do the architectural thinking. You might, instead of, if you are doing your own security application, then you would write some of these documents that would be dedicated to yourself. But often if you're assisting as an advisory, you might be assisting the main architect of the project to go and think about certain architecture diagrams, such as system context diagram, functional component architecture, and so on. You'll do some threat modeling and support them. You will also, present some of your decisions to the architecture board, because you've got to convince other people that your decision on security is a good decision. You will track and respond to comments on the security architecture because you've got lots of feedback, and you might get involved in testing as well, in a very important phase, defining the strategy and some of the plans. Now you've got your architecture, you need to go and think about, well, the engineering. As an architect, you'll still get involved in the design, in terms of the software or the integration of components. So you might get involved in advising on the implementation, defining the detail of firewall security rules, advising on secure coding, and so on. So you'll get involved in and testing. So you're still getting involved in the engineering, although you've done most of the design, and at this point you're advising on that implementation. And it doesn't finish once you've implemented, because you'll get involved in the operations. There will be technical issues, even when you go live, that you'll have to go and resolve. There will be change requests to the solution. You might have to review to see that security is included. You'll have to go through change boards and so on. And you'll get involved in security incidents. So architecture and design is a pretty broad role, because you'll be involved at all stages of the life cycle of a system. And that's, to me, is the great joy about doing this job, is that you get to do a variety of different things, and no one day is the same. So that was my one last thing on here. So you need to document architectural decision records, so that the key deliverable of an architect is their decisions, and therefore you need to document it and persuade people that they should make those decisions. So I just got a diagram here of some of the artifacts that we get involved in creating but I'll leave it for you to go and have a look at that. So what are good skills for a security architect? I think a good understanding of information systems architecture, because it's not just security you have to understand. Do I understand about networking, operating systems, application development, and so on, and how those components integrate together and how they're operated? So the foundation skills are, like anybody in IT, is a good understanding of that architecture. And you build up those skills and experience over time. But the key thing with any architect is to communicate clearly, both in a written form and verbally, because you're going to make decisions and you're going to have to communicate those decisions and persuade people that you're making the right decision. So the soft skills, when you get into an architect role, is extremely important. But you get interesting problems. So you might have to communicate at a board level or to management team, but you go and get technical issues. So, for example, we had some networking issues that were causing the communication between two parts of an encryption system to fail. So we had to look at some of the protocols and the logs and to analyze the architecture and what the problems were. So you'll end up, even as an architect, having to think about the bigger system, but analyze the detail of that particular application. You'll need to understand cybersecurity threats at a broad level, and you'll need to understand how to create a service design. So it's not just technology, it's processes and people, but how do I put that service together so that security will not just be architected on day one, but will continue to run as part of the system. So there's a longer list of other attributes again on the website, which is excellent, but I sort of set those as my core attributes for an architect, and you'll see very little about security on there because, as I say, security is a specialist area, but it's understanding the things that go around it and communicating it, which is most important. So we'll deal with questions at the end, and I will, while Wayne speaks, I will answer some of the questions where appropriate as well. So that's my perspective of being a security architect. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Wayne.
Hi, thank you, Mark. Let me just share my screen and make a start. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Wayne Evans. What you'll probably find is that a lot of what Mark just said in his very good brief is almost echoed in mine, because fundamentally we're the same. What I want to do is try and make it a little bit more personal. So it's a bit about me and how I did it. First thing is, obviously I'm a non-grad, so I entered cyber through working from help desk right up. So obviously my background is in 2001 I joined the British Army. Completely changed my life. I joined the Royal Signals, where I became an area systems operator, which is effectively dealing with radios and basically BT man in a field with a gun. I did that for 2 years, did all my training, and then I got identified as, okay, this guy knows some stuff about computers. And I retrained to become what they call an information systems engineer. So I learned all about MOD systems, effectively your first, second line, third line support for MOD Army systems. During my time, I did 2 operational tours of Iraq supporting mission systems, JOCs, various other systems. So getting a lot of operational knowledge on how secure systems run, managing crypto, all those good sort of things in an MOD environment. Unfortunately, I did pick up an injury and I was medically discharged. So I got a quick job as soon as I got discharged with Capita. I spent 3 months with Capita whilst finding my feet. And it was in that role that I decided I really wanted to become what they used to call a class consultant. There was an instant where I was like, hang on a minute, that's wrong. You can't do that. That breaks security. We were supporting police at the time, and one of the technical architects wanted to join multiple police networks through one terminal to make his life easier to administer them. And I was like, no, you got to have separation, physical separation. It's like, and they wouldn't listen to me. And they got a class consultant in, and the guy said, no, you can't do that. And that was a trigger point for me. I was like, I want to be that guy. So I started looking for another role. Then I joined my current company over 10 years ago, IS Help, and they provide third line, second, fourth line in design and consultancy work to MOD. We have a lot of customers. And I worked my way up from a support and analyst all the way up to the security architect, where I now reside. Worked on some very interesting projects. Most of my projects are at secret and above. And then I also expanded out, and I do Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus assessments. So I work for a company called Umbrella Cyber who do that. Also, for my sins, I joined the Navy Reserves and their Joint Cyber Unit for a year until they realised that, hang on a minute, I was medically discharged from the Army and I'm no longer insured to work in the MOD environment. So they had to terminate my service, which was a shame. I really enjoyed the job and the role, and very, very insightful. Again, adding to my base knowledge. So there's some of the job titles that I've held during my career. Obviously, training. Obviously, my Army Class 1 Information Systems Engineer course provided a large exposure to good governance. So I got this background, a bit like Mark said, understanding the fundamentals of networks, how things are run, and all different technologies and exposure. Because at the end, there's a soldier, you could have been thrown into anything to fix this. I haven't got a clue, you have to Google it. Obviously, it was a good foundation, but it wasn't formal qualifications. When you leave the Army, they do some resettlement training, and I used my resettlement training to get my MCSA in Microsoft Technologies. Cloud really wasn't a real big thing back then. I got my Cisco quals, a VMware qual, and my certified ethical hacking, which was my very first cybersecurity qualification and exposure. Again, it was an okay qualification, a tour of the tools, got me interested. And then obviously self-studied to get my CIST. And then I certified under the old scheme as a CCP at practitioner level. That allowed me to go on to projects in IS Help, advising the customer, government customer. I got my BCS chartership through that. Then it transferred to a new scheme, more paperwork, more applications, sitting foundation boards, just like talking, interviewing. Got certified there. And then it transitioned to the new titles. So obviously, again, more paperwork did transition across. I did some CE plus assessor training. Just it's that continual development and getting these certifications to show that you can do these things and you're staying current. For me, I felt it's very more prominent as a non-grad that I needed to demonstrate this. So it's like I quite often use the CISP as it gets me past the HR firewall. It's great course, great training. It gives you that foundational knowledge for the role. A lot of the soft skills which you need for the specialism is echoed in what Mark was saying. Communication skills. There's a reason that's at the top. You're a conduit between management, the technical designers, the engineers. Understanding, reading, interpreting. And then obviously understanding the business context and their business requirements. I think Mark said it, requirements at the start, what's the system doing? You have to take that strategic level thinking, understanding how things work. And collaboration and teamwork, you're not isolated, you're not a silo. You work with people, you talk, curiosity, if I might not have a direct impact on that part of a system, but I'll be like, oh, how does that work? What does that do? So I understand the big context and understand what's going on. Being adaptable and flexible, I have to be adaptable. I could be asked, can you look at this? What's your advice on that? And being flexible and helping the customer out is it. And then obviously decision making. Sorry about the typo. Decision making. You need to be able to make that decision and back it up and say, well, no, you can't do that because of this. These are the consequences, or it's against these rules. Particularly in the MOD environment, there's JSPs, there's gates. There's always exceptions, and you always say, well, you could ask for an exception from the rule loader or something like that. Attention to detail, yeah, you've got to look at the detail sometimes. It's all right taking a bird's eye view. Sometimes you need to zoom in. Documentation, ever so important. I think Mark highlighted that as well. You cover your back, document your decisions and why. And quite often people will ask you the same questions in slightly different, and it's already documented. And a big thing for me is mentoring. It's like I've got a couple of people who I'm mentoring now, bringing them up, and not only does it help me because I can now delegate down, it brings them on, and it's genuinely a pleasure to mentor people, and I think that sort of technical leadership, that's what you are. You're a leader in your field, really helps out. Policy and governance understanding and operational requirements. You need to understand the policies and the governance in any organization, and that will help inform your architectural decisions. The soft skills, just that is what you are, really. But you also have to have some technical skills as well. You have to understand what you're looking at. So you need those design and architectural fundamentals, out there. More important these days, cloud skills, even in my realm where I'm mainly dealing with on-premise, secret and above systems. Cloud skills are on there. On-premise systems are becoming private clouds. I am the protecting the user, understanding access. Data-centric security is becoming a big thing. Understanding these concepts. Always learning. Understanding basic server config, vulnerability management. A big thing which I'm working on at the moment is my cross-domain skills. There's some established NCSC patterns out there for cross-domain, and it's a real growth area. And I think Mark mentioned it as well. There's an obvious shift left in the development cycle. So CI/CD skills really important. And understanding and infrastructure of the code, because you can just sit and look at the GitHub, look at the YAML, and understand and see how things are built without having to pester the dev team. Security was supposed to be an enabler, not a disabler. We need to be able to help them out. So a day in life for me, at the moment, I'm working on a major MOD project as one of the architects responsible for a cross-domain solution, installing garrisons and various other equipment. I'm very lucky. I can work remotely at Secret, which is really, really useful. So day always starts with a daily stand-up, regurgitating what we did before, any blockers, issues, and what we intend to achieve. A normal life cycle. There's normally meetings. I spend an inordinate amount of time doing meetings. So obviously learning time management, prioritization, and learning to say no sometimes, or I can't attend that meeting. It's quite important as a skill. I do a lot of lab time. I like to test and hands-on. So if there's a bit of technology I've been asked to look at, I'll just fire it up in my home lab and I'll play with it. I'll understand it, and that way I can make informed decisions because I've gone through the installers, I've gone through how it's implemented, I've looked at the manufacturer's best practice. I can then better advise my customers because I've physically gone through it. Sometimes you don't have time to do that, but and then I spend a lot of time documentation, writing documents, engineering notes. Whenever I do lab stuff, I'll make engineering notes. I get ad hoc questions. And for me, my life is quite busy. I sprinkle that with Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus assessments. It's like you're a security expert, so you can use these skills to help other people. And the reason I love doing my Cyber Essentials stuff is it gives me exposure to other organizations. I'm very mod centric in my day job. I don't get to see the financial industry, legal people, all these different things, different exposure. So use your skills for the best. And that's me really, a day in the life. The specialisms and the titles are gatekeepers. They allow you, they certify you. It's a matter of pride as well. I'm quite proud of them. I've had to work hard for them. And at the end of the day, it shows that you are a specialist. and that's what you do. That's your bread and butter, and you've worked hard for it. So I strongly advise anybody to go for it if that's what you're looking for, and it will really help. That's right. Back over to, is it Connor now?
Yes, thank you so much, Wayne, and thank you as well, Mark. It's been really helpful to hear from both of you. And I know that, Mark, you're making your way through the questions as well, so thank you. We will try and get to all of them before the end of the session. I'm going to hand over now to Connor. Hi there.
Thank you very much. Load up my slides. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. I'm going to just kind of give you a brief overview about what it looks like to apply for professional registration, how you go about sort of achieving the awards. So SciSec's been a licensing body of the council for coming up to nearly a year now. So we got licensed back in December 2023. And the three specialisms we've been able to award against is governance, risk management, audit and assurance, and the one that you guys are probably going to be interested in is the secure systems architecture and design. There is a fourth, security testing, but we're not a body for that one. So you need to go through the cyber scheme or CREST to gain that certification. So there's broken down into 3 levels at the moment. So we've got associate, principal, and charter. Associate is kind of, you'd be looking at practitioner kind of level to be going for that level. Principal, you could be an expert in your specialism, but that's specialism specifically. And for charter, you'd be obviously expected to be an expert in that specialism, but also to have a wide knowledge of other specialisms as well. But there is going to be another level being introduced soon, which is called the practitioner level. That's going to sit somewhere along the lines of where the current associate is. So practitioner, hence the name, you'd be expected to be operating at sort of practitioner level. And what they're going to be doing with associate is sort of bringing that down to sort of, I believe, more knowledge and understanding. So kind of grads coming out of university. But I know a lot of work's going on behind the scenes with that at the moment. And more news should be coming in the next few weeks, I believe. So sort of stay tuned if that's a level that could be suited to you. How do you go about applying for professional registration? So it's a competency-based application. It's made up of 18 different competencies from skill groups A to E. There's 3 A skills, so there's A1, A2, and A3, and these are the technical skills. So you'd obviously have to be answering those technically, depending on the specialism you're applying for. And then B to E are the softer skills. So the 2 documents you'd want to have to hand when kind of looking to apply for this is going to be the contextualized standard, which focuses more on the technical skills, and that would be a good guide if you're unsure what level you should be applying for, whether it's principal or charter. That would be a good guide to sort of help you make that decision in what level to go for. And the SPCC focuses more on the softer skills. So again, another good document to have to hand when filling in your application. And both of those documents can be found on the council's website. So please do go have a look if you are interested in applying for professional registration. How do you go about sort of presenting your evidence on the form? So we strongly suggest using something called the STAR format. So it's situation, task, action, and result. What you want to get across mainly is sort of the work that you've been doing specifically, not necessarily what the team's been doing. So you'd want to be using sort of a lot of I's in there rather than we's, because although the team might be doing great work, they can't award the team, they're going to be awarding you specifically. So just bear that in mind when looking to apply. And sort of you submit your application form, we do a quick review of it internally. If we're happy that everything's been met, we'd send it out to one of our assessors who would complete the paper assessment. If they're happy, they put you forward to interview, but if they're not, you would get a chance to resubmit once using assessor feedback. So it's not a case of you only get one shot at this, you do get one chance to resubmit if needed, and then you'd be passed on to interview, hopefully. And the interview does vary. Interview length varies depending on the level applied for. So at the moment, associate is kind of looking at 45-ish minutes. Principal, you're looking at an hour to an hour and 15, and charter can go up to the full 2 hours. So you could need to have quite an in-depth conversation, especially for the charter level. So they're sort of rough timelines of the interview length, depending on the level. So prerequisites to apply through SciSec for professional registration. To apply for associate or principal, you need to hold associate membership of us. And if you're looking to apply for charter, you need to hold full membership to SciSec. I'll get onto those two levels in a moment and how you go about achieving those. And once you are professionally registered, there is a requirement that you submit CPD annually. So cost of professional registration, so charter and principal will cost 700 plus VAT. That is an application fee, so you wouldn't need to pay that every year. And the associate application is currently 500 plus VAT. I'm not entirely sure what the cost is going to be for the new associate level. We sort of need to have a discussion of what that looks like and how the application process will happen for that. But we'll be sort of releasing that in line with when the new title comes out. And the ongoing fees would be to keep your SciSec membership active, so that would be associate or full membership. And there's a £99 fee that needs to go to the council. You'd pay it to us and we'd pay it on, but that's a register fee, so that is to remain on the register. So routes into SciSec associate membership, if you've got a CISP or a CompTIA CAS Plus, you just need to send in your certificate to us and we can upgrade your membership to associate. But if you don't hold one of those, then you can apply through the usual application route, which is a similar sort of process to the council registration. It's a competency-based application, although our criteria is set on the SciSec skills framework. That breaks down sort of about 35 skills, I believe, into different subsections. And what you'd need to do is, again, provide competency-based evidence against the skills using the STAR format. I've kind of put a little snapshot in there of what it looks like. So the mandatory skills you have to provide evidence against, and there are J skills and that K. The essential skills, there's a list of 5 that you get to choose from. You have to complete 3 of the 5 from that. And then the specialism skills, you get to choose which ones you provide evidence against. How many you need to do would depend on how far away you are from meeting sort of the score requirements. But you could do a minimum of 8 skills or up to a maximum of 12 for that. So I understand this is probably quite a lot of information to hit you with all at once. So if anyone does want some further information, please do follow up afterwards. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with everyone. So the route into full membership, similar sort of process as the associate application. It's worth mentioning the associate application is only a paper-based assessment. There's no interview for the SciSec associate membership, but for full membership, there would be a 60-minute interview.
Wayne, has Connor gone for you as well?
Yes, he has.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't too sure if it was my internet. Apologies, people. We're having a bit of a technical difficulty. Let me just check in with Connor. I was feeling so smug as well. I thought we were doing so well on timing. I'm going to put a poll up for you to fill out in the meantime. It's just a short feedback, and also if you want any more information on professional registration as well. I'll just check the questions. Thank you, Mark, for making the way through those. It's very helpful.
I was going to say, if looks like Connor's taking time to come back. Has anybody got some questions for Wayne or myself? Wants to speak up? I don't know if you can do that. Sometimes it's easier to go and have that discussion. As a discussion rather than as a text, because you're right. I can't answer the last two.
Yeah. No, I can't either. We might have to call it early. There's no more questions, and those two questions that are in the Q&A, well, I can put them in the follow-up email, so you will get your questions answered. I'll send them over to Connor and then get them back to you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got another one. Yeah. So I'll try and answer your question, Jordan. So trying to get into an architect role, I think, and you're currently in GRC, I think it's difficult. It's trying to go and find, I suppose, working in a team where you can have more involvement in the technical background. And I'm not sure, aiming for SciSec or it's probably not going to change whether that works, getting into that role. I think understanding the practices of an architect and often by demonstrating the use of those in your organization gives you the opportunity to sort of demonstrate that an architect role is valuable. I think understanding the technology, and I think I put the other question for somebody else. CISSP has its people love it and hate it, but one thing about it is it goes through the principal technology components of a solution, so networking and architecture and other things. So it's a good starting point in terms of training to go and understand that. And I always thought it was more like my degree. It gave you a very broad set of technology sort of backgrounds. So that will also help you as well. And sometimes it's finding organizations, may not be your current organization, that allows you to swap into different roles and challenge you. So one of the benefits of working for IBM was that every 2 years or 2 or 3 years, I totally changed my role. I found another opportunity that stretched me, and that was encouraged. And therefore, I was able to go and move into roles, whether it's systems management or administration or architecture and so on. So that's, and also organizations that sort of look for you to go, and part of your promotion and other things is demonstrating your skills, speaking on different forums and so on is also helpful. Yeah. So I think that's probably from my experience, that's one way of getting in there. I don't know if Wayne has any other thoughts on that question.
No, I think you covered that there, Mark. Perfectly, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, David, for buying the book. There's one I haven't read it yet. Well, it takes you through. I think if you got the book and haven't read it, I would start with where you are in a project today, and read that section, and rather than read it end to end, so you can dip into the particular section of the book. The book you recommended again. there is the Enterprise Security Architecture from Sherwood Associates, which is the book that sort of talks about enterprise architecture, but it's more about in larger organizations where you're trying to go and have multiple projects and you're trying to create the guidance between those projects. For solution architecture, until now, there are books that talk about the technology and the individual components, and the book that we put together is more about the process and the method, and that's where there's security architecture for hybrid cloud. It's titled that because it's for search engine optimization. It's really architectural thinking for secure design is what it's about. So we had to change the title to meet the publisher's requirements. And you can look on securityarchitecture.cloud for information. So I think I've answered those two. Where are we? It's a positive holding associate. I can't really answer that one. So I've answered David's, I think. I've answered that live. Do I click answer live? Yeah, I've done that. Yeah. I made a point of changing roles often and got to the point where I'm contracted for my unique skills against an SCSF. Sadly, it sounds like I need to take a step down to go sideways. It depends whether you going back to a permanent role and not being a contractor is a step down. It's a different role, and I guess when you're in a permanent role, they look after your career, and therefore, you know, in a larger organization, you can move to different roles because it's seen as a way of retaining you. In a contractor role, then you are basically paying. You have to go, do your own investment, do 10 courses, and then they may not give you that experience because they're buying that role is there for your specific set of skills. So yes, but if there is an opportunity for a contractor, if you have if you've invested in your skills, like gone on courses and other things, and can demonstrate that, sometimes organizations think you're so valuable that they keep you and move you to another role. But that's rarer for a contractor rather than a permanent role. Okay. Lots of questions coming in here. Wayne, you got anything else you wanted to add to those?
No, nothing at the moment. But I really like the question about positive evidence in the current job market and association principle and chartership. I think this one's quite an interesting question because I think it goes to the awareness of the scheme, and like I think a lot of places aren't fully aware of what the titles are, what the scheme. I think the NCSC and people like that are doing a lot of work in the educational sphere to help out on that, and it's so I think it's not quite where it should be in terms of positive evidence and how it's affecting the job market. But I think getting in early on the track and being a market leader is a good solid strategic move.
Yeah, and I think it's skills, things like CISSP and these other things, from ISC squared and CISM from ISACA, they focus on passing a test. Yes, you have to go and say, I've done 5 years experience, but really what I think CISEC is really looking at a broad range of skills, and therefore it has a more valuable, it should be more valuable in the industry than just getting CISSP, which just says somebody says you've been working in security for 5 years. So, and I think that's a greater value. And I think we just have to explain that to the industry, that's the value and the difference between the other certifications that are available. So we've got a bit more time.
Thank you both. Now we've got Connor back. Connor, do you want to? Did you have? How far were you through?
That was the last one. It just cut me short slightly. Apologies, the internet dropped.
There's some questions for you in Q&A if you want to move on to those.
For me, which one would that be? I can only see a couple.
Just at the top. there was a few around chartership and the so the first one was, are people from Jersey and Guernsey Channel Islands eligible for associate principal and chartership?
I can't see any of those, but the answer is yes.
Lovely. They're in the Q&A section, which you'll see next to the chat at the bottom of the screen. That should bring
Yeah, that is where I'm looking. I've just seen the Jersey and Guernsey one. Yes. So we've got people that hold them, not just in the UK. I think we've got someone in Singapore that holds a title. So yes.
Lovely, thank you. And then how long do you have between failing the paper assessment and the resubmission? Is there a time limit?
We haven't put a specific time limit on it at the moment. Obviously, the sooner the better, because we want to get you through as quickly as we can. But I mean, if you could get it done within 2 to 3 weeks would be ideal. But if you need a bit longer, we can appreciate that the schedules are busy. So we haven't got a specific timeline on that. But obviously, the sooner the better. But if you need a bit longer, we can give you that.
Lovely, thank you. Then I guess it's back to the floor. As a recent graduate completing a cybersecurity consultant graduate scheme in my organization, what are the foundation/practical certifications in security what foundation/practical certifications in security architecture would you recommend?
Wayne, do you want to have a go? I think I've answered this one for somebody else, but I thought it'd be interesting if you have your view.
You're on mute, Wayne.
That would help. Sorry about that. Yeah. So the foundation practical certifications, a lot of them are vendor specific, but there are a few which are vendor agnostic. So it's like there's a lot of foundational technical skills out there which it's like S plus things like those. They're very basics, but they give you the understanding. But particularly for the security architecture, you then have to dive into the specialism. So, for example, if you do a CISSP, you can do the concentrate, which is specifically on security architecture. So you can follow those sort of things down those routes. But I would look at some of the vendor stuff as well. So it's like if you're mainly working in the Microsoft environment, you can look at the Microsoft security exams, and they teach you the best practices, the architectural layouts of how Azure and work. So you can gain those sort of practical experiences. And whilst they gain more at the techies implementation, you understand the architecture, the best practices, and things like the best, good, better layouts.
Lovely, thank you. I'm going to cherry pick just because we're running out of time. So for good security architecture in an organization which has limited resources, what security framework would you recommend?
So I always, if you've got very little in, smaller companies, I always use something like the NIST cybersecurity framework as a starting point for a list of requirements. But just be aware it isn't the only set. That's a starting point, and then there are other organizations that deal with coding and like OWASP and engineering side. So I would look to other best practices. Look at your industry, what best practices they have. I would then use other frameworks from the industry that provide you a head start. So yeah, so that's what I use as probably NIST. You got any other you think of, Wayne?
Not off the top of my head. Obviously, my head's quite deep into the UK CAF. But obviously that can be quite in the weeds and quite rocket. So yeah, nothing further to add.
And there's the cloud security organization that does as well. There are 3 or 4 different frameworks around. If you have a hunt around depending on your context, you'll get a cloud security framework as well. So that might be helpful as well.
Thank you. Gosh, the questions are coming in thick and fast. Are there any more details of converting CISP into associate explained? Are there more details of converting CISP to associate explained on the website? I guess that's you, Connor.
I'd have to go and check, but I mean, it's a relatively simple process. You'd need to be an affiliate member to start with, which you can do by signing up and joining through the website. But then it's just a case of sending in your certificate to us at either membership@scisec.org or accreditation@scisec.org, and we can just go in and make that change for you.
Okay, lovely, thank you. That is all we have time for today. I realise there's still quite a few questions to get through, so I will put them to everybody in an email, and then hopefully we should be able to come back to you on those as well. I'll try and get them into the follow-up email, and you'll also receive a copy of the recording and the slides as well. So thank you everyone thank you Mark, thank you Wayne, thank you Connor for sharing your wisdom today. It's been really helpful and insightful as well. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Right.